Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Production channel over YouTube, and welcome to another Friday review. And today, wow, it took me this long, didn't it? I am finally reviewing pretty much the 21st studio album, at least solo-wise, but 28th overall release from Alice Cooper. It is Detroit Stories, which was originally released all the way back in February 26th of pretty much this year through at least earMUSIC. So, without further ado, let me just get into my overall thoughts on Detroit Stories. Get into it. Alright, so where do I really begin with Detroit Stories? At least just how I'm going to at least just overall attack this overall review here. And when I mean attack, I'm more so meaning just how am I really just going to construct this one. Oh, that's right, it's not going to be that hard, because before I really start off any sort of review or at least before I really get into any of my thoughts, I have to do a track listing rundown so I can tell you folks what are the songs on this album, how many songs are on this album, and what's the time length for this album. And since we have at least about overall 15 songs on here, well, it all clocks in at 50 minutes and 28 seconds. So these 15 songs are beginning with the Velvet Underground cover of Rock and Roll, going to Go Man Go, the outrageous Cherry cover of Our Love Will Change the World, Social Debris, $1,000 High Heel Shoes, Hail Mary, Detroit City 2021, Drunken in Love, Independence Dave, I Hate You, Wonderful World, the MC5 cover of Sister Ann, Hanging on a Thread, or at least Hanging On by a Thread, Don't Give Up, Shut Up and Rock, and then finally ending with the Bob Seger and the Last Heard cover, East Side Story. So there's your 15 songs. So pretty much what we got here is technically there's at least since prior to this he had been working on this entire album since 2019, and basically got it finished at least by, was it last year? Actually, he got it done by last year at least, or maybe at least early this year. Let me kind of do a rechecking here. Yeah, since last year he had this all finished, and boy, I know it took me a long time to finally get around to it, but again, I was just waiting on my particular copy for a real long time. But again, just a week ago or so, I finally was able to, I finally got a hold of my copy and was finally listening to this. But what we got here is, depending on at least the track listing, since last year we had released an EP titled the Breadcrumbs EP, there's at least some songs from that EP that pretty much made it onto this album, because the Breadcrumbs EP was pretty much, in many ways, it was an appetizer for at least Detroit Stories. But besides, of course, the re-recording of Detroit City, which is an old song from the Eyes of Alice Cooper album, there at least of all the stuff from there, besides maybe Your Mama Won't Lie, won't like me. Actually, your mama won't like me. I'm looking at the computer here, and it's the type fonts or whatnot are just a little bit far away in a way. So there's at least, besides that song, the rest of at least the EP from Go Man Go, East Side Story, and Sister Ann at least made it from the Breadcrumbs EP onto this album. But for the most part, most of this stuff is at least original to the sound, besides, of course, containing at least 4 cover songs, which I've already mentioned, and then, of course, containing 1 re-recording. There was at least 10 original material on this album. But besides all the 10 original material on here, basically we also have some, I guess some guests, or at least guest musicians and whatnot, that have pretty much, well, actually a lot of guest musicians, but obviously I will mention you the more recognized names that are guest musicians that pretty much decide to help out Alice Cooper with this overall album here. I mean, from at least names like Joe Bonamassa to Mark Farner to even Wayne Kramer of MC5, Mark Farner, if you're at least familiar with the Grand Funk Railroad. Steve Hunter, who had been with Alice Cooper since Welcome to My Nightmare and those basically his beginning solo stuff. Besides those guys being on this album, and of course Tommy Henriksen, who was probably, to me, or anyone who was at least metal fans would mostly know him from obviously being the guitar player for Doro or Warlock, who had been working with Alice Cooper since Welcome to My Nightmare, extra emphasis on the number 2. You should know which album I'm at least referring to. Who had, again, his contributions basically to Alice Cooper bled into Hollywood Vampires. He provides plenty of work on this album, but besides that, there's at least 2 songs on this album that pretty much was recorded by what's left of the original Alice Cooper band, and those 2 songs being Social Debris and I Hate You, which on the song I Hate You, pretty much all 4 of the original members pretty much added in, at least provide vocal parts, which are basically just more like, I guess you say more spoken word, though in kind of shouty ways, but I think it kind of works into what the context of what the song is basically about. It's pretty much all, has to be somewhat based around their reactions they probably had received from a lot of folks around the Detroit area when they were just starting off, basically. Just starting off as a band, all the whatever hate they got. That's basically, I feel like that's what I Hate You might be about, or it could be about maybe the overall, the way it also seems to be the overall, maybe the turmoil between maybe the members for why they all broke off and why Alice Cooper just broke off for basically going more solo after Muscle of Love. So it could be also based around that, but but I feel like you can add in a little bit of the reactions they might have would have gotten during that early time period. But that's where I guess kind of goes into the overall story of Detroit stories, which the overall inspiration for this album, or at least the overall concept, is basically largely came from basically Furnier's memories and experiences in the hard rock scenes of the 1970s and 1980s Detroit. Again, he draws heavily on the aesthetic of the Motor City that he grew up in and became renowned in, pretty much attempting to return to the hard rock roots that he had found there. And that's pretty much what you kind of get with at least this album, because besides featuring a lot of at least cover songs, which work in the album's, it works in at least Alice Cooper's vision for this album. For the most part, this is pretty much more of a throwback, and him just once again just revisiting the sort of classic sort of rock sound, at least that classic Alice Cooper band sound of at least. At times, you can maybe go to maybe albums like maybe School's Out, or even the more rockers of like Killer, but you can definitely hear some at least Billion Dollar Babies and Must Have Love, and even at times, even because of Bob Ezrin being the producer on here, you can definitely tell he's trying to also go back to more rockers that you would find at least on classic albums such as Welcome to My Nightmare or Alice Cooper Goes to Hell, or even at least, even for an example, even The Last Temptation. You can hear plenty of those kind of sounds. Again, The Last Temptation was pretty much an album where he was pretty much, once again, was seen really kind of trying to really recapture the past. And that's, so pretty much Detroit Stories, just like even an album like The Eyes of Alice Cooper or whatnot, or even Welcome to My Nightmare, just sees Alice Cooper once again just really more so having a lot of nostalgic memories and really going back to some of those the earlier sort of rock sounds of at least the earlier albums. So you definitely get that. I mean, you're not gonna, of course, we're never going to expect at least a more 60s psychedelia of at least the first 2, or at times technically also Love It to Death, but you definitely do get a lot of the sort of classic sort of glam rockers or hard rockers that you would at least get on some of those classic Alice Cooper albums, and are definitely heard in songs such as Social Debris, or Hail Mary, or even in like I Hate You, or Shut Up and Rock. You definitely get that sort of classic sort of sound. But you do get some of that experimentation. It's definitely heard on, especially on a song such as $1,000 High Heel Shoes, which really kind of has Alice Cooper flirting with more kind of very funky kind of rhythms and beats and overall rhythms and riffs and whatnot on this song. It kind of has that for it, and it's, again, it works. And again, it's a very tongue-in-cheek style song. It's again, it's nothing really new or different to Alice Cooper. He's known for being that sort of odd one. I mean, on Paranormal, he did have, at least on the second disc, that one particular track, which is now escaping me, though I'm probably going to have it typed down at least on the bottom of your screen. Still, though, you know what I'm referring to. Again, it is nothing different for Alice Cooper. He's always been this kind of goofy or whatnot, and you definitely do get plenty of that on this album. But at least of all the more covers here, I think my favorite ones of at least has to be, of course, the Velvet Underground cover, which also contains some guest musicians on this one. Just kind of looking through, again, Steve Hunter, of course, provides guitar on this track. Even Joe Bonamassa also provides guitar track on this one. Joe Bonamassa also provides one more track to at least Drunken in Love, which is kind of typical, I guess you can say, or is Alice Cooper trying to, in many ways, play along with that, or at least find something that would at least fit the sort of personality of Joe Bonamassa. It's a straight up sort of standard heavy blues number, a bit, very slow blues number, but it's good. I like it. Again, it works with Alice Cooper's very goofy fucking lyrics. It works. I dig it. Wayne Kramer, of course, MC5 does provide guitars on at least some of his songs. Even, I think, even including, let me see real quick. Yeah, he does provide at least guitars to at least the cover of Sister Ann, which, again, it's an MC5 song. Wayne Kramer, MC5. So there we go. Overall, there's just nothing really bad on here. I can't really find anything terrible about it, and whatever sort of negative response I've seen towards this sound from those, I feel, especially was it earMUSIC, I don't want to always mention a lot of other reviews because I feel like that might be a little bit pretentious and whatnot. But again, I've for what they're the overall review of it, or just all basically saying that it sounds like a confused album or whatnot, or even trying to say it sounds like him basically doing the same thing since Hey Stupid. Probably hasn't heard any of some of the ones afterwards because of it. He's always kind of mixed up a lot of the albums. He's never really, I don't get where that review comes from, and where the person, I guess the guy must have been living under a rock or whatnot, or probably hasn't never really kept up with Alice Cooper. Because again, there's a lot of throwbacks to some of the earlier albums. You get also some very punkish type of songs that's definitely heard in songs like I Hate You and Go Man Go, which definitely have more of a very punk-like feel to them. And it's really cool, and I like it. It does keep the album very interesting. That's the thing why I kind of dig about this album, is that it's not trying to do the same thing for the most of the album. He does kind of pull out some interesting numbers, or at least just overall interesting rhythms or beats, or even at times just overall styles for the album. It's not completely diverse, but it's got a little bit of variety there. So whatever he calls confusing is basically what I consider to be more so kind of a little bit more variety written. Because it if anything, it works with the concept of what he was going for with this album. So I find it to be another sort of good album from him. Again, I dug Paranormal from 2017. I think it's another solid album in a row here. His second solid album. So I really dig it. There's really nothing bad on here. Again, his personal favorites. Again, I dig the cover of Rock and Roll. I dig Go Man Go, Souls of Debris, Hail Mary, Independence Day, I also really dig. I Hate You, I also like. The cover of Sister Ann, I think, is pretty good too. Shut Up and Rock is great. There's nothing bad here. Just nothing bad here. I do want to really mention real quick before I really leave off here. I do want to mention that the song Hanging by a Thread, Don't Give Up, originally was kind of written in sort of at least response to at least those who were struggling during COVID-19. However, I guess he went and redid the lyrics and basically more so made it very mental health awareness. And for those who are dealing with it, who are struggling with at least mental health. And again, due to the fact that we have lost at least a couple of people, at least names this year to at least suicide, especially for one being none other than Mike Howe of Metal Church. I know I paused there, I apologize. But again, I was kind of forgetting that, which is wrong. Still, we've lost at least to those two at least suicide, and I feel like this song kind of all at times a little bit hits home to the fact that how many we've lost this year to at least mental health and depression and suicide and all sorts of that. So again, it seems to really kind of be one of those that I feel really hits a little bit too hard to home for at least a song, but it has a point and it makes a lot of sense. And of course, again, it's a very good sort of gesture, at least, and has a lot of great intentions from at least Alice Cooper. It's one of the songs that feels the most serious on this one, because again, most of the songs on here are, again, at times are typical sort of Alice Cooper goofiness, but a song like Hanging On by a Thread is basically on being really serious and really kind of hitting home at least at something that is very much still an issue to this day, and it's one of those where he takes his time to and addresses issues. So it's really interesting. It does kind of keep the album very much different and still relevant to today. So there we go. There it is, folks. There's my overall review on Detroit Stories from Alice Cooper, and my rating, I'm giving it a 8.95 out of 10. Again, from all the sort of positives I've given this album, do I think it's probably the greatest thing he has written, or at least released? Not really. But is it the worst thing he's ever written? No, it's by far not really the worst thing he's ever written. I think it's another solid album from Alice Cooper. And again, since I dug Paranormal, and I also dig this one, so he's released overall 2 albums I've really dug. So I can't really say anything bad about this one. It's just another good album from Alice Cooper. It is definitely not the second coming of at least Bill and Dollar Babies, or even Killer, or Welcome to My Nightmare, or any of those kind of albums. You know, it's not the second coming of that. But overall, it doesn't need to be a second coming of at least a classic Alice Cooper album. It just needs to be a good, solid Alice Cooper album. And I think that's what Alice Cooper delivered here. It was another solid album. So that's all I gotta say. So with that, I know this album has been out since February. If you have any sort of thoughts, whether they at least be negative or positive, you can leave them in the comments section below. But with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. This is Heavy Thrasher saying I'm out. And I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.